Good morning. My name is Dennis Mingus, and I want to talk to you about how to build Eden. You see, there's an original Eden, which is the jungle. And because man learned to read and write and be able to record his information on paper, which you get from trees, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is actually, and how you got out of the jungle, how you were kicked out of Eden, was because you became capable of accumulating the knowledge of your tribes, and over time that brought you out of the jungle. You started building societies and civilization. However, you don't really have a civilized Eden, and an Eden that's designed for you instead of just the animals. Now, what's the biggest problem that man has, and this is a biblical problem, this is recognized in the Bible as well, is that you've never been able to eliminate poverty. And the reason that you haven't been able to do this is because it takes a lot of control to eliminate poverty, and then it takes a system that can still operate within the control you have to apply as a government or a king, whatever. You have to control how far a person can fall as far as income, as you have with minimum wage. So you have to have a basic minimum wage that you're going to pay people for working. But further, you have to do more than that, you see. You also have to control prices so that the wage you're paying them, they can easily afford to live off of. And if you don't control prices, you can't ever end poverty. Since this is an Eden society, we need to pay attention to certain prophecies. Therefore, we cannot use an interest system of either paying or receiving interest. You see, in the Bible that's forbidden, to pay interest or to receive interest. We need to have a jubilee process in handling debt. You see, in the story of Moses, he established a jubilee concept. His wasn't correct. You have to understand the way the Bible was written. They were shown the future, and in the case of Moses, he tried to apply some of the things he saw in the future, but obviously it's like apples and oranges. Our future is one of technology to some modest extent, and computers and all this other kind of stuff, where back then they didn't have that. So his ability to apply these concepts was very limited. We need to give our people as much personal freedom of choice as we can live with. Therefore, the only major crime governing the people, not business. Business, the way the government handles business, and the way the government handles the people, are two different things. Would be a crime of violence, extreme violence. Following the adage of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That kind of concept. So people who commit extreme violence, we would consider you a threat to society and isolate you from the rest of society. We'll get into that later. We can see the first thing we need in building this system is we need a banking system that does not pay or charge interest. Also, the banks cannot charge fees. In other words, the banks cannot make a profit of any kind. and will be constantly losing money. Since they are funded by our printing press, you see, then that won't be a problem because the printing press just prints more money and gives it to the banks. So the banks can never go broke, but they are always going to lose money because that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to get the money into the hands of the people. The only way this can be accomplished is the banks would all be a part of the government, you see, not commercial or privatized banks, they'd be part of the government, and handle everything from the printing of money to the lending of money. This is the formation of the king's purse, you see. And that money, it has value. The value that it has is the value that the government gives it. The government can make sure that that money has value because it would be against the law in our country to use any other kind of money, any other currency. If you come into the country with you got some foreign currency, you can't use it in our country. You have to go to the bank and have it exchanged into our currency because you can only use our currency. It'd be a very serious crime to try to use somebody else's currency because that undermines, it's like committing treason. The banks can never foreclose on housing and should have no reason to do so, which is also something else we'll get into, that the way banks handle the loans by making your payment a percentage of your income. If your income goes down, your payments go down. It's no big deal. We just adds to the term of the loan. So there's no reason to foreclose. The government will be able to leverage its tax revenue through bank loans of 250 years to 1,000 years or more. Although 1,000 years seems like it's probably long enough. Allowing the government to spend however much money it can figure out how to spend, you see, which basically gives the government unlimited funding. So let's say you've got a revenue for that year of $1 trillion, or 2 trillion, or 3 trillion, whatever it is. But let's say $1 trillion. And you take 10% of that, and then you use that on a loan as a loan payment. Every year you're going to have that same revenue coming in. So every year you'll be able to make that 10% of your revenue payment. And then you're going to do that every year so that after 10 years you will have used up all your revenue on loan payments. And this will force you to perform a jubilee every 7 to 10 years. And the government will be required, if not by law, by common sense, but it will be by law, that you'll have to declare a jubilee, which is to forgive all debt of everybody that owes anything to the bank, and you can't legally have a loan that isn't owed to the bank. So if you're taking 10% of your money and of your revenue and you're getting a loan, how much of a loan can you take out? Well, you can take out any amount of loan you want. Say like you can take out 1,000 times that, which would be like, if it's 100 billion, 10 times would be the trillion of your revenue. That'd still leave you, so you could take out a loan of $100 trillion on that amount, and then you could have a term of 1,000 years so that you're only paying on that loan the 10%. And after 10 years, you throw the debt away and you keep everything you were building. So whether the money owed to the bank is of private debt from the citizens, or business debt from businesses that took out loans to do something, to build some new infrastructure in their business, or whether it's from the government and operating their budget and building whatever they're trying to build too. All that stuff is now forgiven and owned by whatever the individuals, the business, or the government. The bank doesn't profit from anything, it just constantly loses. It will be illegal to have any other debt. The currency that you're using at that time of Jubilee will be declared null and void. You'll take the currency that you were using and you throw it away. Then you will print a new currency and begin that currency with a stated value. You'll say, here's a new currency and this is how much it's worth. This should be viewed as a domestic-only currency, basically because who would accept our currency when they know that at any time we can declare a jubilee and make the currency null and void? You see, our people have to, our businesses within our country have to, because that's the law. They don't have any choice. They have to use our currency. They can't use any other, which is why our currency will always have whatever value we want it to have, because the members of our community, our society, have no choice. That's the power of the king or the government. So all foreign trade will basically use a barter system, which as a barter system it can be a straight barter system where you're trading one thing for another thing, one widget for another widget, or it can be a system in which you're selling something, a commodity or service to someone outside the country, and you're accepting their currency. So now you have a foreign currency that is recognized value in international trade, and then you can use that currency to buy something else. Or the world can establish a separate currency for international trade, and you handle it that way. But even in that process, they're not going to accept our money either, so they're going to have to accept some kind of barter system arrangement with us in order to be able to facilitate the process. And what does that do? Well, that means that we're always going to have to be in a position of zero balance trade or positive. We're either going to spend everything that we made off of selling stuff to somebody else, or we're not going to we're going to have more than we can spend in foreign currency, and we'll accumulate some foreign currency. So we're either going to have positive trade or we're going to have zero trade, but we'll never have negative trade, which is what you should want if you're a country with half a brain. Every adult citizen over the age of 21 will be required to own a home or condo, and they will be given loan terms of at least 150 years in these loans. That term could be a little bit more than that. What you're doing when we determine the length of the term, what we're actually doing is we're saying, okay, here's a person that's living on minimum income, and they're going to live on minimum income their entire adult life. Now, because of Jubilee, the value of your home is going to go up from Jubilee to Jubilee, because you buy a home and then you have to turn around and sell it and buy another one every time a Jubilee is declared, so that you're spending everything that you're supposed to. You have to spend 15% of your income at all times. It's automatically taken out toward the home, even when you own it, because you're supposed to buy up and keep constantly increasing that value, so that when you retire, even on minimum income your whole life, you can retire with a home of enough value, which is at least $1 million minimum and probably more than $1 million, so that it'll provide you, through our retirement system, an annual income of well over $30,000 a year that will make it easy for you to live on. This will be geared to the minimum income's ability to retire on the home value that for that level of income can achieve over a life of work. They will be required to spend 15% of their income on this housing and no more. The home value will increase over the work life and be the foundation of the retirement system. You can also buy a home from the government and sell the home to the government through the Banks of Eden. When you retire, your primary home will be converted into a retirement income worth at least $1 million in value, to a maximum of some, maybe 4 or 5 million. It's a retirement system. We want to make sure everybody has enough to live on, but if you're rich enough to have a lot more than this, you don't really need our retirement system anyway. But so we'll put a maximum on how much we'll pay you, because you already got your own money. This will be divided by 30, and that will be your annual income throughout your retirement years. You see, so $1 million divided by 30 is 33 1/3 thousand a year. Now, of course, that money would be adjusted to the value of the currency. So how much you get every year can go up and down, but it's only going up and down in reflection of the value of the currency you're receiving. Or you could say adjusted to inflation and deflation. Although it'd be more real than the inflation numbers they try to give us. Be real inflation and real deflation. Everything would be counted. If people live much longer than they do now, on average you live about 80 years, a little less maybe. But if you live in a 120-year average, well, then we might have to increase the age at which you retire. We can grandfather the current retirees and people that are getting close to retirement, even a ways back, into this system by assuming you've always been in the system and then trying to reflect where you would be if you had been, according to the work history that you've already experienced through your lifetime, you say. Where does that place you in ours, type of thing. Now, of course, that means we've been making payments without the asset of the house, but it's a little illusionary, but it's no big deal. We're a wealthy government. We can handle it. Retirees will have access to housing for the elderly, and that housing will allow them mobility of living as in timeshares with flexible time allowance. So the idea is that some people, they just want to live in one spot and stay there. They want to live around their kids and stay there. And other people, hell, they want to travel all over the planet, Well, we want to be able to accommodate whatever you want to do. And let's say you want to go over to this resort area and live there for a while. You might want to live there for a month. You might want to live there for a year. It won't make any difference to us, you see. As long as there's space available, we want to provide you with that kind of luxury. So it'd be like a long-term furnished rental. You're not going to move your furniture around everywhere you go, so it'd be furnished. And it'd be at very modest prices. The government will handle it all, you see. Now they might, contract it out to some private entity to actually do the work, but it would still be a process that would be under their control and regulation. Now let's talk about taxes. Everybody has a problem with taxes, and taxes are a pain in the ass. Well, this is the way I would deal with taxes. First of all, clean the slate. 0 taxes for anything. And then we collect one tax, and that tax would be on individual income, so there'd be no business taxes, because they just get passed on to the consumer anyway. So there'd be no taxes except for individual income tax. Now, any money you make is income tax. And we treat everybody as an individual. It doesn't matter if you're married, it doesn't matter if you have kids or anything else, and you can't use your deduction to add to your spouse's deduction. Everybody's treated as an individual. So your income would have a deduction that would be equal to the median income of the population, which means half the people would receive a deduction great enough that they would pay 0 tax. And those people that make over the median income, well, they still get that deduction. They're only going to pay tax on money above that median income. And then, well, you're sharing your prosperity with the benefits of the government. The government is like a partner in your activity. That's the reason you're able to profit so well, is because of the way the system is designed. So the government's going to get half of what you get above. So 50% flat tax above the median income. And that's it. That's the only tax collected. And it should be more than enough to handle the needs of the government. But it's more reason to collect it than just taxes. So 50% is appropriate. The government would provide a guaranteed job to anyone that wants a job, regardless of their personal history. See, you go to the government, you say, hey, I need a job, and okay, you're hired. They cannot refuse you. This provides 100% employment at all times of those who want to work. Now, some people might not want to work because they've got income coming in that's already greater than the minimum income. But if you don't have income greater than the minimum income, then you're required to work. because we're not going to give you welfare. Now, there are some people that can't work because of a disability. Well, that's a different system. That's medical system. You take care of them with the medical system then. They don't have to work because they're disabled. But if you're an able-bodied person and you can work, and you're of the age to work, well, then you have to work. That's the way the system works. You've got to work. And you will always be able to have a job instantly because the government will give it to you. And if business wants to hire you, they're going to have to hire from that what amounts to a work pool. Now, what the government does with you in that work pool, they could send you to school and have you be learning some kind of skill. And they're paying for all your costs and paying you a salary for a normal, regular work week. So what they want you to do is up to them. But you do have to work. Even prisoners in our prisons must be granted this right to work. So they will be able to retire like everybody else. The Eden government is a rich government and a civilized government, you see. Our prisons are not about punishing people. They're just about protecting society from the prisoners. If you are of working age, then working is required. There should be 2 prison cities for all prisoners, one for very violent offenders and one for all the rest, which really there shouldn't be a lot of all the rest, but there shouldn't be a lot of violent prisoners either, because in our system it's really hard to get away with anything. We should, you're looking at a government that is extremely rich, and technology is moving in this direction anyway. Every inch of our country would be under constant video and audio surveillance. So it's pretty hard to get away with anything. Now, the surveillance is not an active system, it's a passive system. And that's the difference of freedom there. You see, we're not trying to prevent the crime directly. We're indirectly preventing the crime because we're guaranteeing you that we'll catch you and have the proof to convict you because of the surveillance system. So if a crime is reported or somebody goes missing, we can look up in the database and see exactly what happened. We go back and we find out the last place the person was, we trace them to where they disappeared and see what happened. Or we go to the crime scene at the date and time, maybe back up a little bit, see how it came about, and then follow everybody to where they are and go pick them up, and boom. You know, it's 100% guaranteed that you do it and you're toast. And that keeps you from doing it in the first place. I mean, you'd have to be literally crazy, basically. Well, you'd have to be basic. About the only crime that I can see of violence happening is that people lose control, you see, that they become incensed and just go off on somebody. The prison cities should include the immediate family of the prisoners. So if you're convicted of a crime and you go to the prison city, your immediate family goes with you. Now, our prisons aren't about punishment, you see. The prison city is it's a normal city. The prisoners' only confinement is that they cannot leave the grounds of that prison city. So, and the grounds is going to be like probably about 30-mile radius around the city. You have to stay within that city. You can't leave the grounds of that city as a prisoner. Your family can come and go, but you can't. And within that city, it should be a normal living style. You know, the prisoner has to work for a living, has to buy his home and condo or whatever. He has to provide for his family. He has to do everything that he would do if he was living anywhere in the country. The only restriction on him is that he can't leave that city. That protects society from that violent prisoner, but it doesn't protect the other inmates from him, but they're all violent too. And it doesn't protect their families, but you married him. Or her. Hey, you can get a divorce, but the kids would still have to come and go. You never lose the right to your kids for any reason. See, this is these prisoners would have a normal life as they would have in any other city, because Eden is a civilized nation for all and a paradise. Our prison cities are not for punishment, only to protect the rest of society from the inmates. Every city in Eden should be designed to hold from 500,000 minimum to 2 million maximum. And then there should be a housing capacity 20% above the current population at all times. That's to facilitate, like during Jubilee, everybody's going to own their place and they have to buy a new one. So everybody's going to be moving around every 7 to 10 years, or we're going to have to upgrade the place you're in so that it will reflect the greater value of your home, you see. And it'll, with a 20% overhang, it'll make that whole process a lot easier to handle. The value of homes, condos will be controlled by the government banks so that their value is constant. So we don't have these highs and lows that you experience. And so that the value has a reality and a certainty. Well, this tight control is necessary because it's the nation's retirement system, you see. We're using it as your retirement system, and so we had to make sure that it's going to be there. Every city should have its own agricultural system to provide all the food necessary for the city and be fresh every week of the year. Therefore, nothing should have to be frozen. To accomplish this, that means that a lot of the food produced for the city, the farms, have to be under a canopy or built underground, as far as that is concerned, in a structure, an infrastructure that's going to control the environment so that the temperature, the heat, the cooling, the humidity, the water, the light, everything is supplied as though it's being grown in a laboratory someplace, you see, so that we can control when the harvest will occur. We can plant anytime we want to because we're controlling the atmosphere within that farm. We're controlling the environment. So we can plant and harvest every week of the year. Every city should be designed to employ mass transportation and other methods to avoid the necessity of automobiles, which we can accomplish with a lot of vertical housing, so that we have like a building with maybe the bottom 3 to 5 stories of the building is devoted to businesses, and everything above it is condos for personal living. So most of your transportation there is vertical. You're using elevators. And then you go over to the next building maybe, or there's a short distance, and you not only have the businesses that are in your building, but you have the businesses in everybody else's building. And that allows us to have a restaurant system that can deliver food to your house or your home in the condo like you would find in a casino hotel. So you can get room service anytime you want it. This is about living as though you're on vacation all the time, even though you're working. The housing should be for first-time minimum income, so you haven't had a jubilee yet. The smallest amount of space of housing should be 1,200 square feet. You don't want to have any place smaller than that. All housing should be capable of standing up to a Category 5 event. Tornadoes, hurricanes, shouldn't be anything that you have to be concerned with. Of course, that means that all the housing is going to have to be built much stronger than you have now. Everything you got now is really just rubbish that wouldn't meet our standards. Now, when we get to the cities, as far as management of the cities, you got like a federal bureaucracy or government or king, or governor, you might want to call him, instead of king. King invokes a lot of negative thoughts in your heads. And then you get the cities, so you can have a mayor and his government running the city, right? And he gets money from the overall government, the federal government. Those cities can have kind of their own rules. See, I see every city as having different rules of what's allowed in their city. So you can have all black cities, so that every person in that city is black. So you can't say that something was being done to you because of your race, because all the cops are black, all the judges are black, the mayor's black, the whole government is black, and they can be all white, they can be all Asian, or any ethnic group or religion. You can have Puritanistic style cities. You can have hedonistic cities. You can decide, as long as you got 500,000 people that want to live the way you want to live, well, then you can have a city and live that way. We don't care. That's up to you. Whatever rules you want to live by. And then there shouldn't be any bitching, you see. Now, there's one thing that will be illegal in all the cities, one thing that you cannot override by your rules of your city is violence. You cannot be allowed to commit extreme violence. Otherwise, you might as well be back in the old Eden, the jungle, you see. That's how you become civilized. From the jungle Eden, the freedom you have in the jungle is carte blanche. You can do anything you want. And there's a lot of violence in the jungle. To be civilized, we take the violence out. not all of it. You don't want to take all the violence out. You don't want to get too sensitive to violence. So mild violence is, sporting events and what have you. And, people get pissed off and have a fight. Nobody really gets hurt, no big deal. But extreme violence, we're very hard on. Likely to do a life sentence for that. And, you're not being punished. We're just being protected from you. Medical. Anything that can be considered medical should be supplied by the government for free. Hospitals, doctors, dental, eye care, eyewear, any hearing aids, anything. Drugs, everything is free. You don't pay an insurance premium, you don't pay co-pays, you don't pay deductibles, you don't pay squat. You just walk in and you got a problem, they fix it for you if they can. The government in my system, they can handle it any way they want to. They can say, okay, well, we're going to own the hospitals and the doctors and the drug companies and everything else so that they can keep their costs down. But our system is rich. Our government is filthy rich. Got more money than knows what to do with. So you don't have to handle it that way. You can leave it privatized to some extent, although I wouldn't suggest that it's very wise to privatize drug companies. That's very dangerous. But you can have a private system, basically, and the government just pays the bills for everything. And then it's just how much are you willing to be gouged by these people. Well, that's up to you. I really don't care. You got to have a lot of, I don't want to tell you how to do everything. I need to see what you really like. Right now, you're not too good. And if you don't improve, we're going to have a problem. Casino gaming is the other thing that we need to address here. Right now, casinos are a plague upon society. I used to be a dealer, so I know a little about this. So what we're going to do is that the government will own the gaming operation. There isn't any deeper pockets than the government, you see. So the government's going to own the pits, and they're going to own the machines, they're going to own the gaming. And every single bet a person makes will be at true odds. Now, the only way that the games are kind of complicated, some of them, and the payouts, it's really difficult to give an actual true odds payout. Because you get into decimal points, It's like 1/1000th of a penny or something. So dealers can't deal that kind of thing out. So even if you were trying to make true odds, unless you use a debit card system and allow computers to make the payouts, you can't get to actual true odds. But that's exactly what we would do. You'd have to go in to the casino and establish an account where you'd get a debit card. Then you'd go to the tables or the machines and you'd use your card to place your bets, and then the payouts would be exactly at true odds all the time. And then, of course, for the dealer's sake, you'd have the ability to indicate on your bet an amount that you're going to put up for a tip to the dealer, you see, trying to encourage him to help you win. We don't really care, We don't mind the house taking losses. All other gaming, of course, would be illegal, that you could only bet through the casino systems. Now, since the bets will be basically true odds, there should be really over a long period of time breaking even as far as the gambling is concerned, as far as the government is concerned. Now, there would be overhead for dealer salaries and management of the pits and everything else. That overhead cost could be gotten back. You could break even on the overhead as well by leasing the property around the pit to businesses, and then the lease money would pay the overhead. So basically the government can operate it for free. And what I'm doing here is I'm turning this really a plague into a benefit. This becomes a beneficial system, because now we have a casino that's hard to lose in. I mean, you're going to really feel like, wow, this is great. I mean, and then we're going to have a minimum on how much you can lose of your own money. You can bet all your winnings, but you can't bet your own money more than 10%. So 10% of your income is all you can ever lose in the casinos. If you've lost that, then you have to wait till you make more money, and then you can bet 10% of that, you see. That way, this is a paradise. We don't want people going out in the desert blowing their brains out because they lost everything they have. That ain't going to happen in our system. And because we would have a lot more winners than you have in your casino, at least temporary winners. Overall, it's a break-even system, but you have highs and lows like the stock market, you see, ups and downs. So people will win, and when they do, it's easy money, and easy money spends easy. So that's why those venues around the pit are valuable and worth paying a hefty lease on, because you're going to have a lot of customers there. Probably half the people that came in are going to break even or win. So they're going to be kind of willing to spend a little, you see. Now there's a lot of other things I could help you with, but really I'd kind of like to see you all do it yourself. What this system will do is eliminate poverty for good. As the government, you can design the system so that you can basically get rid of refrigerators and freezers and stoves and washing machines and dryers for the public and have it all commercialized, as you would if you went to a hotel. You'd be living in a condo, but it would be operated as though it was a hotel. So you can have maid service, room service, you can have your laundry done, you can do everything. So you don't actually have to do anything but live there and have fun. And occasionally you have to go to work. But you see, even the people at the bottom, at the minimum income, people that are doing some of those menial tasks, are going to be able to have that same luxury themselves. They're going to be able to afford to have room service and meals from the restaurants and everything else like everybody else. And their laundry done for them and everything. That's considered minimum living standard. The government can make sure that happens by controlling prices. The agricultural system can be designed so that the government is constantly trying to reduce the cost of food from the beginning to the end. you got a government with unlimited spending capabilities, it's not hard to accomplish. So this is your chance to actually have a paradise on earth, Eden. But you're going to have to do it. I'm not going to do it for you. I can explain how to do it because obviously you don't know how. You've never been able to figure out how. So I'm giving you the information, the intelligence of how to do it. It's a can't-fail system. This system can never break. It never has a depression. Depression's impossible. A recession is reasonably impossible, although the concepts of the economy aren't the same in our system as yours. You're always going to be fully employed. You're always going to have plenty of food. You're always going to have everything you need. So you're just going to have to organize and develop the will and desire to make sure it happens. And then voila, once it gets started, it isn't going to stop. It'll just keep growing until it takes over the world. Peacefully. There's no reason for violence. Have a nice day.